easy one on 120. So let's see, I'll do dy over 4y plus 28 equals dx. Like, that's my first thought, how to separate it. That's not one of my answer choices, though. So I do have to do a little bit of algebra. Let's see, which one of those is the same thing as that? Especially if I factor out a 4 from the bottom. So which one is that? So is that the same thing as? It's the same thing as A. Yeah. B doesn't even have the variables separated, so that's out. I'm not sure where 50 even came from on C. And D is like an Algebra 1 nightmare there. So answer A. (121) A particle moves along a horizontal line so that its velocity is given by this. At time 1, the particle has position 4. Find the position of the particle at time 2. Okay, they gave me velocity, and they're asking about position. So how do I get from velocity to position? Yeah, that's the antiderivative. A derivative would get me to acceleration. An antiderivative would get me to position. So let's take the antiderivative of velocity. And I guess it doesn't matter for multiple choice, but on free response, please make sure you put the dt or dx on the end. A bunch of you didn't. And I guess it some ways doesn't matter, but like it officially needs to be there. So let's see, increase the power. Why am I doing this? Let's pick on people like Seth and Kelsey. So Seth, how about the antiderivative of negative 12t squared? You did the work in your head. Increase the power by 1, divide by the new power. So yes, negative 4t cubed. Kelsey, how about the antiderivative of 36t? 18t squared. Very nice, 18t squared. So that's like sort of position. Why am I saying sort of? I got a plus c on there, but that's why they gave me this 1 and 4. I can use that to find c. Although there's another way to do this. I don't know which one you'd prefer. I could have used 1 and 2 up there. And then that would be s of 2 minus s of 1. But it's the same math either way. Let's just plug in 1 to get 4. So negative 4 plus 18 plus c. That was kind of them to give me 1. That was made life easy-ish. So if I move 4 over, I get 8. Subtract 18, I get negative 10. So negative 4t cubed plus 18t squared minus 10. Okay, well, what do I do next? Plug in a 2. Done all the hard work. S of 2. See, negative 4 times 8 is 32. 18 times 4 is 3672. 72 minus 32 is 40. Minus 10 is 30. So a lot of work on that one, but not too bad. You just had to remember that the sort of the SVA link there, where you take a derivative going down and an underderivative going up. (122) Separate, integrate, solve for C. In fact, that's all we've been doing. We separated for A, or for 120. For 121, we solve for C. For 122, well, they've already separated. all we need to do is integrate. Jimmy, how about the antiderivative of y dy? Y squared over 2. Kenneth, how about the antiderivative of x, dx? X squared over 2. Okay, well, neither one of those guys was wrong, but neither was completely right, because I need a plus c. And it doesn't matter which side it's on, but usually we put it with the x. And then I start looking at my answer choices. So I don't know where this 4 came from. Nothing has a 4 on it. And if I move things to the same side, am I going to have answer A or answer B? A, right? Because right now they're both positive, but they're on opposite sides. If I move y over, it ends up being subtracted. So that was the integrate step of separate, integrate, quantitate.
Wait, can you write out what you did? Like how you got that?
How I got A?
Yeah.
So let's see. I see that x squared is positive, so I'm going to move the y squared over. So minus y squared over 2 plus c. And because it says a solution as opposed to the solution, it means that 4 could have really been anything. So if we multiply through by 2 and move the c over, it's going to be of that format. Oh, this looks like it's going to be all 3 steps. I'm going to need to separate and then integrate, and then they give me information to solve for C. So dy over e to the y equals dx. I don't really like dy over e to the y. I think I would just rather write that as e to the negative y dy. Right? Like it's trying to bait me into doing natural log there, but that's not right. So there's my separate step. Integral of e to the negative y. Caden, the integral of e to the negative y?
Could just be e to the 0.
It's going to be e to the something. The antiderivative of e to the x is e to the x. Right, that's the simplest one.
Which is negative e to the negative y.
There you go. So e to the negative y, but there's a negative sign in there to account for the chain rule. So some people would do a u substitution, but all you'd get is a negative sign out of that. So Caden kind of just handled that in his head. Luke, how about the antiderivative of dx? Or maybe if you need a 1 in there, maybe that helps. What has a derivative of 1? Just think backwards. X. So just be x. Well, sort of, it would just be x. Plus c. Okay, so that's the first round of my answers, but they've solved for y. Or have they? Good answer choice C. They didn't solve for y there. E to the negative y equals negative x plus c. Oh man, it would sure be nice if c worked. Like it's in the right format. I just got to figure out if I plug in 1, 0, will that work? E to the 0 equals negative 1 plus c. E to the 0 is 1, so c would be 2. That was kind of weird. I did not have to solve for y. Glad I peeked at my answer choices before doing loop-de-loops and rewriting and all those algebra tricks. They weren't needed for that one. Uh-oh. 124. So move the dx over. Integrate both sides. I get y on the left-hand side. That's the easy part. The right-hand side, there's like two possibilities in my mind. The square root of 9 plus x squared looks a little bit like inverse sine.
No,
Right.
tangent and not square.
Tangent doesn't have a square root. Sine has a minus sign though, doesn't it? Yeah, sine has a minus, arc sine has a minus sign. So it's not arc sine. So what do I do then? Let's do u substitution. What do you think u should be? Yeah, 9 plus x squared. And we can start picking on people. Aslan, what's du then? If u is 9 plus x squared. It's locked in over there. Du would be 2x. So we almost have that. 2 and a 1/2. Remember, you can only adjust by numbers. You can't adjust by variables. There was a test not too long ago where some people did u substitution and put an x in the top and an x out front. You can't do that, only with numbers. So 1/2 antiderivative, all of that's du. The bottom is u. I'm going to rewrite that as u to the negative 1/2 du. Now it's just a power rule. Just a power rule. It's always dangerous to say imply something is easy and then call on someone. Put Avery on the spot. So Avery, what's the antiderivative of u to the negative 1/2? 2u to the 1/2. Increase the power by 1, divide by the new power. She answered my question. Hopefully she remembers that there's a 1/2 out front as well. So that's u to the 1/2 plus c. I wonder if I should start looking at my answer choices here. U to the 1/2 plus c. D has a u to the 1/2 over 2, so that's out. C has it times 2, that's out. That would be for people who messed up the 1/2 and the 2 and the u substitution stuff. So C and D are out. A and B, I just got to figure out what C is equal to. So I've got to actually work the problem, or finish the problem. Wait, you know what I could do? Instead of finding C, I could just plug those in and see which one gives me, plug in 4 and see who gives me 5. That's sort of the same thing as finding C, but maybe it's a little easier. X is 4, square root of 9 plus 16, square root of 25 is 5, 5 minus 5 equals 0, so that's out. If I plug in 4 for this one, 16 plus 9 is 25, that equals 5, so it's got to be B. In fact, I think no, C would work. C would give you 5. So even if you didn't know anything about calculus, I think 5 plus 5, 2 is 5. You could throw one or two of them out just by plugging in 4 and seeing if you get 5. No calculus at all, but it would at least narrow down your answers. All right, 125 looks weird. How do you want to do 125? There's a couple of options. Any thoughts? I could plug all of those in and see which one works. Seems like that might not be the best option though. I could plug in 1, 2 and see who gives me 2 when I plug in 1. Let's do that first. That seems like an easy enough thing to do. If I plug in 1, I'm supposed to get 2 for an answer. So e to the 4th times e squared. Whoops. Times e squared. That does not give me 1 when I plug in 2. So I don't have to do any calculus. I can rule out part A. E to the 4 minus 4. E to the 0 is 1. So B is a possibility. If I plug in 2 to C, 2e to the 4th, that's not 1. He's out. And if I plug in 2 to D, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. 2e squared. So he's out. So it's got to be B, and I didn't even do any calculus. It's kind of a bad question from the College Board side of things, I feel like. Like you don't have to do any calculus to get that one right. I'm afraid I was going to go have to check more, but check the easy stuff first. Slope fields. Well, I think you can just... Which one of those looks like dy dx equals sine of x? I mean, there's only one of them that looks like a sine or a cosine. And I'd be worried about, sine versus cosine. I'd have to be really careful. But none of those are even close to sine or cosine except for C. Let's see. The next three. X minus y. That means this depends on x and y. The next one depends only on y. And the last one depends only on x. So I think that's enough to narrow it down. Let's hold off on x. Well, I don't know. In some ways that might be the easiest one. Which one of those graphs changes as you move in x or in y? A depends on x, but doesn't depend on y. B depends on both. Let me go back to A because I said it. It depends on x, right? As I move in x, it changes. As I move in y, it doesn't change. So that depends only on x. B depends on both. C we already got. D, as I move left to right, it doesn't change. As I move up and down, it does. So it depends only on y. So that depends on stuff. What if that wasn't enough? What would you be stuck doing? Probably just checking points. So find a point that's different for each of them and plug it in and see what you get. 127, a little bit harder. Slope field shown at the right is the differential equation for, let's see, I got some of these that depend on x, some on y, some on both. What does my graph depend on? Yeah, x, definitely x, but not y. So I can throw out D and E. And then I've got to work for it a little bit here. You want to pick a point, or do you want to pick a... You can pick a point, or you can notice a value there. At x equals 2, dy dx is 0. So A is out. I still got B and C, though. So let's just pick a point. At x equals 0, my slope is negative. Maybe -1, maybe more, who knows, but at least negative. So if I plug in 0, this one is negative, and this one is positive, so it's got to be B. It's the only one that fits. I suppose you could check that by integrating. That'd be x squared minus 4x. And I would believe that. That's a positive parabola. The other one would be a negative parabola. And those others would be weird things. $128 looks harder than all of them. Because, by my depends on method. Depends on x, it depends on both, but they all depend on both. So that's going to take some work. I'm going to have to plug in points. Let's skip that one for now. Right, I don't want to do all the problems for you. Almost all of them. 129. A population of shrubberies increases at a rate proportional to the square root of the population. Ben, you're up for this challenge. 129. Write me an equation that says the population of shrubberies increases at a rate proportional to the square root of the population.
ds over dt equals k square root of s.
There you go. K square root of s. Pretty good. Alright, so now I've got to integrate, plug things in, and then plug in 16. This would be a long one. This one doesn't say calculator on it, but based on those answer choices, that's almost certainly a calculator problem. I guess we could do a few steps here. ds over square root of s equals k dt. Going to rewrite that as s to the negative 1/2 ds equals k dt. Separate, integrate, quantitate. Two integrators here, two all-star integrators. Jameson, how about the one on the left? What's the antiderivative of s to the negative 1/2 ds?
2s to the 1/2.
Good. You guys are getting faster than I am. Increase the power by 1. Divide by 1/2. That's where the 2 comes from. Yes. Holly, how about the antiderivative of k dt? What's that? I could slide the k out front. That helps. And then it's the antiderivative of kt. Sort of. Not wrong, but not finished. KT. There's more to it. Plus C. The plus C in there. That'll help me figure out the rest of this stuff. Okay. Oh, do I want to solve for S or do I want to solve for C? I don't know. There's my 2 points. Although they worded that weird. Goes from 2,500 to 3,600 in 5 years. So at time 0 we were at 2,500. At time 5 we're at 3,600. I'm thinking I don't want to solve for S. I think I just want to plug things in and see what I get. 2 square root of 2500 equals k times 0 plus c. Oh, they were kind of nice to us here. Square root of 2500 is 50 times 2 is 100. To s to the 1/2. Remember, you'll have scratch paper, so you can take as much room as you like on these problems. So now I'll plug in 5 3600. Square root of 3600 is 60. I don't know k. I do know t is 5. Maybe this wasn't a calculator problem because the numbers are working. 120 minus 100 is 20. K is 4. So now I know everything. 2s to the 1/2 equals 4t plus 100. I want to plug in 16 years. Let's see. 4 times 16 is 64. Plus 100 is 164. Divide by 2, I get 82. And then whatever 82 squared is. Maybe this was a no calculator problem. 82 times 82. Going old school multiplying here in case I really don't have a calculator. 6724. Maybe that was a no calculator question. They made the math easy. I guess the good news is if that shows up on the no calculator part of the test, you know they have to have rigged it. They have to have rigged it to give you nice answers. Nice-ish answers, anyway. Let's see. 131 is almost the same. 130 is separate and integrate. And so I think I will call it a day. Leave you a few of them to do. And there's still time left, so in the next 13 minutes, you can knock out the remaining 1, 2, 3, and then be close to done. A couple reminders. Video is due by tonight, so watch the video by tonight, watch the video by tonight, watch the video by tonight. Then the only thing you bring tomorrow, if you bring anything, is worksheet 4, and then we're all done for a while. Tomorrow you can work on the packet, or you can just whatever. And the picture, when did we say the picture? Oh, picture is due by next Thursday, when the packet's due.